And welcome all, one and all. Thank you for logging in this week. We are going to be talking about Optiflow this week. So we are very excited about the recent addition to our platform called Optiflow. It's been around for a couple of years now. And we just want to talk about it with the people out in the field, my fellow sprinkler nerds, or sprinkler ninjas, as I call them, out in the field. If you are a Weathertrack user and not using Optiflow, this is designed to just be an introduction to the features and kind of what it looks like and how it might help you manage. So we're not going to go super in-depth into the detail, but we will talk about the solution a little bit and let you know kind of what we're doing behind the scenes to stay on top of our game. To do that, we have invited a very special guest, my brother from another mother, Joe Jackson, who is from Salt Lake City, Utah, and has been with us working on Optiflow since long before its release. Joe is part of the advisory team that we kept in touch with our engineers as we developed stuff. They would try it out on Joe and I as guinea pigs. So he has a lot of experience and a lot of stories about Optiflow that I think will be valuable for our conversation. So Joe is from Sprinkler Supply and can help with your smart water management solutions anywhere in the state of Utah. All right, so in the idea of bite-sized chunks of Optiflow, what I have decided to do is just handpick in each of the next 3 episodes. We will look at one feature specifically without going too far down the rabbit hole in how to make it happen. Just talk about what the Optiflow solution does and how it helps our users. And we're going to focus on a feature called flow optimization for this episode. So the first of the series of 3, we'll talk about flow optimization, which is a great solution for our users. And we are in the solutions business. And one of the most frequent questions that our users were coming up with were questions about water window alerts or water window warnings. This is something that happens on all levels of Weathertrack when you have scheduled more irrigation than time in the night to irrigate. So you have 14 hours of irrigation to perform and only 12 hours of irrigation time to perform that in. And when you do that on your Weathertrack, it produces an alert that just gives you a heads up. Hey, I don't have enough time in the night to get through all of the irrigation that we're scheduling. And this is what that looks like in sort of a traditional sense. This is an example of what a Pro 3 controller looks like when it creates a schedule. This is a 5-minute chunk. Each one of these bars is a 5-minute interval all the way through the night. You can see the total irrigation pattern of this controller that went all the way through the night, watered 48 stations from our Meadowview HOA, and on 48 stations, it took 16.5 hours to deliver all of the necessary irrigation. And so with the onset of more efficient irrigation that takes longer to deliver the necessary irrigation, as well as on big systems or complex systems, our users are finding it hard to get all of their irrigation done in the time that they're allowed, especially in areas where water restrictions live and you can only water during certain times of the day. So that is where Optiflow steps in. On top of all the features that you expect out of Weathertrack, all the weather-based irrigation and the central control management, we created the Optiflow solution, only available on a certain handful of our controllers. The top tier of the Weathertrack family enables Optiflow, which is a solution that delivers the shortest amount of, or all of the irrigation that you need in the shortest amount of time possible by optimizing your irrigation system to use the capacity of the system design, to use all of the water that your system has and shorten the amount of time that it takes to irrigate. So let me show you how that works. With Optiflow, you know how many gallons per minute your main line can provide. So in this example, we're going to have a main line that can provide 100 gallons a minute. And then in addition, Optiflow knows how many gallons per minute every station in the field uses, right? And that's going to be different for every station. So we have big stations and small stations. They all use a different amount. Optiflow will know both how many gallons per minute every station uses and how many gallons per minute your main line can provide, and optimize your irrigation program to keep your main line flowing at its capacity. So in this case, first step, or the first irrigation might happen on the two largest stations, right? I've got two stations out there running 50 gallons a minute. That gets me to my 100 gallon per minute total. And we run those to the end. Get done with irrigation on those. And the next thing Optiflow might do is select two 40s and a 20, right? Two stations that run at 40 gallons a minute for a total of 80, with enough left over to pick up one of the smaller stations, right? And this is where we start to optimize the program. We start putting all of those stations together, running them at the same time because our system can handle it, and then minimizing the amount of time that it takes to irrigate. Once those three are done, Optiflow knows that it can pick up all 5 of the remaining stations. Optiflow will run the 230s, the 20, and the 210s, get up to 100 gallons a minute, and then in basically what is the time of 3 stations on a normal controller, the Optiflow will have delivered all 10 of these stations all of the irrigation that they need. So by using the capacity of the main line, Optiflow strives to reduce the amount of time that it takes to deliver the necessary irrigation, okay? And this is what it looks like in real time. So we took our example, our Meadowview HOA 48 station controller, and this was our setup. We see all the irrigation took 16.5 hours in an unoptimized format. And we took that same irrigation, ran it through the Optiflow, and reduced the irrigation for this site by more than half. 250% increase in the water window efficiency, right? That means that every blade of grass got exactly the same amount of water, so your landscape is healthy, but instead of taking 16.5 hours to run that irrigation, Optiflow did it in 6.5.
Hey, Ben, we have a quick question here.
Perfect.
It's a question specifically for Joe.
Okay.
Joe, someone's asking, with your experience in the field and other solutions and contractors, how did they typically try and solve this problem?
So typically what happens is that we have to push the water window boundaries on either side to get the irrigation, the time necessary to irrigate. The other thing that contractors will do is they'll try to run multiple stations, but it's almost impossible to spend the time to identify what stations can run together and then getting those on opposite programs so that they can run at the same time. There's just so much math and coordination that takes place in the background that a contractor is not going to have time to do this on a daily basis. So most of the time what happens, they try to run multiple stations. There's insufficient pressure when larger stations turn on. And that's where Optiflow is awesome, because it's taking those flow values, knowing what can run, just like Ben showed in his example, to solve this problem. So running multiple stations at once or pushing the start time and end times are the two things I see people using at this point when not using Optiflow.
So it sounds like there's a lot of guesswork before. Trial and error was the solution before they had a solution like this.
Yes, trial and error, and you really don't see it until the landscape starts to suffer. Right. Maybe that wasn't the best choice that I made. So
perfect use of a computer, which is what a Weathertrack controller coupled with the power of the cloud is all about. It just takes that guesswork and turns it into science, and then manages these things according to your hydraulics, your ability to deliver water at a certain flow rate, your knowledge of each flow rate per station, so your anomalous uses get picked up. It's a system that just basically helps you do more in that amount of time you've got. And when you've got water restrictions imposed by agencies, whether it's day of week or time of day, this is a tool that really helps you get that job done.
And one of my great contractors, Alex Chavez out of California, one of the Brightview guys, calls it his Goodwill hunting chalkboard to figure out a schedule on a system like this to use all of the programs and start program A at exactly the right time, and start program B, and trying to juggle all of the different irrigation to maximize the use of the main line is something that good contractors take a lot of time to figure out, and Optiflow will do for you. All right, back to our final, this is just a parting thought, right? You understand how optimization happens now. Without getting too deep into the weeds, I just want to highlight that Optiflow is a solution that will not only work for a single controller, like we'll look at today, but it is something that allows the controllers to work together so we can optimize irrigation for the entire site, not just one controller at a time. So if you have, like in this example, 4 controllers that share a point of connection, Optiflow will allow us to coordinate the schedules on all 4 controllers to optimize the irrigation schedule for a night and keep that main line running at its capacity. And then what that actually looks like in the field is pretty amazing. Like what we have here is another example up close so you can actually see it. 2 controllers working together to run a system at 350 gallons per minute. So you can see in each 5-minute window exactly what Optiflow has selected to keep that system using the capacity that it was built with. So I have 350 gallons a minute. In this 5-minute window, Optiflow has chosen 12 controllers from 12 stations from 2 different controllers and 5 different programs that just happen to work to keep that main line running as much water through it as possible. And it will do that for as long as it can to consolidate your irrigation as much as it can.
So Joe, without this ability to manage multiple controllers behind a single point of connection in a traditional world, what would a contractor have to do to get this part right?
You know, a lot of it's the same approach. Is a lot of guesswork that takes place. Your good contractors, they will have spreadsheets, they'll have formulas, they'll have a lot of tools that they've used in the past to get as close as possible. But again, the ability to manage 1 or more controllers on a site takes so much time that it doesn't become, efficient with their time. And so that approach, it's really hard. Optiflow has provided, it has provided so many solutions for me in my market where contractors haven't had that option of being as efficient as they are now with Optiflow.
In an old world, you might have to create 2 separate water windows, one for each of those 2 controllers that are fighting for resources on that same main line. Whereas with Optiflow, you don't have to do that. They can all run together.
Yeah, that is correct. It'll both needs are being assessed and evaluated with Optiflow, and then coordinating that with available flow from your point of connection to be as efficient as possible.
What I like about it then is that if you have one of those complex systems and you're trying to manage flow on that system, you'll have one flow sensor that's wired to one controller. And in a traditional management, you'd have to trick that controller to open up the master valve and let all the other ones kind of measure flow ad hoc as they would. With Optiflow, by managing through Optiflow, the Optiflow system knows we need to turn on the master valve and flow sensor on controller A and the station valve on controller B, and all works seamlessly from the app. You would never even know that there's a whole back-end infrastructure built to help coordinate that effort.
And Coffee, I have a good question here. How many controllers can be run on one main line with Optiflow?
The current limitation that I know about is only hypothetical, and it is station-based. I have heard we have tested it up to 1,000 stations that we can run, and that is just what we've tested. So theoretically, there's not a limit, but we want to be careful when we get way up there and just work closely with engineering and make sure that everything dots the I's. But it does, 1,000 stations blows the doors off of a lot of opportunities, right? We can incorporate a lot of controllers working together at 1,000 stations.
So that's 20 48 station controllers basically is a no-brainer. And beyond that, very, very well could be supported, just hasn't been thoroughly tested yet.
Absolutely.
So Joe, on that topic, you know, when you've got multiple controllers behind this single point of connection, I mean, what are the kinds of things you have to take your customers through from a setup standpoint, knowing hydraulics and all that other stuff? I mean, talk about how you'd set that up.
So one of the biggest challenges is understanding the infrastructure. Very rarely is the person that installed it the guy that's still on site managing it. So one of those challenges is, what is my water supply truly? How much can it deliver to me? And what is my piping network that's delivering it to my valves and from my valves out to heads look like? So that's probably one of the things that takes the most time, because that's so crucial then to make sure that you have the capacity to provide for the need at the station level. And then when you compound that by running multiple stations on multiple controllers at the same time, having Optiflow in the background, having correct information, you are going to be able to maximize supply and your mainline submains to get the right amount of water to run the max number of stations at the same time. So probably the hydraulic infrastructure is what takes the most time in setting this up.
Mm-hmm.
And our subject next week is all of the setup that happens. So we'll next week we'll do a quick demonstration, surface level demonstration, show you what it's like to set up a main line and submains and do the things that Joe's talking about. Just give you a quick sneak peek as to the tools that we have that make programming all of that information easy.
Hey, Joe, another question just for you. With customers that might have these constrained water window needs and their hydraulic capacity doesn't push enough water based on their pressure, is a pump something that you sometimes recommend to help them improve their efficiency and manage this stuff?
It can be. So the tricky part with a pump is not going to generate flow. It's only going to boost pressure. So if it's a pressure issue, yes, a pump can help solve that. If it's a supply issue with not enough GPM available at your supply, a pump will not resolve that. Optiflow can help make sure that we manage that available flow and we're efficient with it. But if we have flow issues, that becomes a real challenge. Pressure, for sure. Let's look at a pump.
Nice. That's a perfect lead in, Joe. I am set to do a quick demonstration of what Optiflow looks like behind the scenes. So let me pull this up and just show you guys as we log into weathertrack.net. You'll obviously land on the homepage. What we are going to look at today is the Optiflow tab. Once you have Optiflow privileges assigned to your account, or you have an Optiflow site, you'll start to see this Optiflow tab on your weathertrack.net account. Now, we need to take a step back, right? To understand the demo, we need to understand that what Optiflow is doing is balancing the gallons per minute of every station against what your main line can supply. So a huge part of the conversation is figuring out how many gallons per minute every station uses. In this case, I've manually gone through and entered at random. I just made up flow values, just like the demonstration that I gave earlier, right? Stations range from 10 gallons per minute to 50 gallons a minute. And this is a 72 station controller. I've also gone through and given them all just kind of generic run times, but stuff that I might, to emulate stuff that I might do in the field. If I wanted 15 minutes, I'd run 5 minutes 3 times. So I gave a flow value and a runtime to every station, and Optiflow is going to balance all of that out for you. So we go to the Optiflow tab and the Optimize page to see this. And let's see, we'll choose this guy right here. Nope. This guy right here. There we go. And you can see all the way through this, here's a controller that is set to 100 gallons a minute. And we can go through and see exactly how Optiflow has decided to run these programs to optimize the flow, to keep all of these stations running and to use the capacity of the main line. So this is a great example of 30 stations across these 4 controllers working together to get the system up to its capacity. And what I like about this screen, let me back it out just a little bit. We can start to see each individual program. Each bar of this display is a irrigation program. So program A here is set to run between 7 p.m. and 11 p.m. and it's highlighted in yellow because it's telling me I don't have enough time to deliver all of the irrigation. So one of the cool things about Optiflow is this dynamic programming environment where I can come in and change the structure to make sure that the system is doing what I want it to do, and then re-optimize the program to see the results. So by grabbing the end of the water window and extending it, right, I just opened up more time on the controller for each of these programs to run. I can also change start times in this environment. If I grab one of these programs and say I want program D to run earlier in the night, let me re-optimize that and see how that works. Another thing that I like is the what our engineers call a dependency, what I call a whoop-de-woo. If in traditional programming I wanted program D to follow program B here, I would have to wait until the water window for B ended to start the irrigation for program D. And there's a problem with that, because if you're running a pump, then the pump has to drop down and wait and then build back up. So what we do on this is we can program in a dependency that allows one station to or one program to follow another. You can also play with the capacities of the main line, right? You can come in here and say, my main line can provide more than 82 gallons a minute. I want to see what happens if I go to 90 gallons a minute and re-optimize. Does it change the amount of time that it takes to irrigate that site, right? And you can play with all of these different parts of the program to really start to understand how your stations are going to irrigate that night. And then you can go through program by program and see exactly what stations are going to water when. So I really like this Optiflow dynamic programming environment because it really lets me understand how everything is going to coordinate and how the system is going to use the water that it's given.
And a couple good questions pertaining to this here. What is the best way to determine the max GPM for POC?
Good question. Trial and error. In our programming conversation next week, I'll show you some of the tools that Optiflow gives you that allow you to program in kind of by the book, what the book would tell you those settings should be, or a designer, what the capacity of the system a designer was targeting. But in real life, sometimes the book answer isn't the actual real answer.
Hey,
so,
Joe, do you have thoughts about that?
So I start with the book to see what it recommends. You can get water meter data. If you know what size your water meter is, you can determine the max flow through that. But a lot of it's, after the water meter, you'd really need to consider what size your main line is, how much pressure you have behind that flow that's available. And, there is some trial and error that takes place, but there is some good information that is a starting point. And then, Ben, I'm sure we'll review this next week, but there's some great calculators built into the setup features of Optiflow that can help you determine a great starting point.
Yep. Great. Another question, Ben, related to this. Does it matter if you're using auto mode or user mode when you're using Optiflow?
That's a great question. And one of the things I love about Optiflow is that it compromises none of the features that you are expecting out of Weathertrack. We still deliver all of the weather-based stuff. The station-based flow monitoring is incorporated in Optiflow. So all of your protections are in place, all of your schedules are in place, and we just build the Optiflow on top of that.
So whether you're using a user-defined set of schedules, you can use the tool to help you optimize to see if you've picked the right start and stop times, Or you can just let auto mode take over and do it either way.
Yeah, I have a cemetery right now that is trying to establish 72 stations of sod. Using Optiflow, they're still running 18 hours a day, but at least they're getting it all done. Joe, do you have customers that are using the flow optimization feature?
Yes, many.
I have. How is it being received, and how is it helping your customers?
It's, it's like a light bulb moment. We go through, we do the learn flow, we set up the main line so we understand how much water is going to each of the areas. And then we go to the optimize screen after we get the Optiflow basic set up, and they're able to see their schedule, which is something that they've never had visibility into before. And then that dynamic programming, so you can move things around if necessary, that also is it's just something that they've never had in their toolbox. But that toolbox, the tool that Optiflow is, helps them resolve these issues of insufficient water window or the guesswork we've talked about, previously in the conversation. So it's definitely a problem solver.
That's awesome. And Joe, I know you've been thinking about this. I told you yesterday that we're going to ask you, what does Weathertrack save you? And I'm excited to hear what you came up with.
So Weathertrack, I'm going to twist the question a bit. So it saves me lots of things, but I'm going to talk about what does Weathertrack do for me. And okay. Weathertrack provides me solutions that work, solutions that help my customers sleep at night, and solutions that provide actionable information. So that I know that we all have limited time. We have only so much time in a day to get all of our tasks accomplished. And knowing that there's tools like Optiflow that are going to help me maximize my mainline, automated mode that's going to put the right amount of water at the right time down. And also, if there are problems, I'm going to know about it, and I'm going to be able to do something. So Weathertrack provides me solutions, which saves me time.
Beautiful. I like it. Let's use that to segue back to our PowerPoint here. We are on the wrap up. I see that we just have a few minutes left. So definitely want to take the opportunity to plug the Weathertrack training and support resources. Any questions you have that didn't get answered on today's call, please filter them to support@hydropoint.com or call them at 1-800-362-8774. They provide 6-day-a-week bilingual customer support. We also have some great online resources. If you want to automate the process, you can look up our knowledge base that has task-based articles to walk you through step-by-step troubleshooting of very common irrigation and Weathertrack issues, as well as all of the resource documents available at our website that has installation guides and tech manuals and all the literature. And then, of course, everything that we're doing for training, both at the Learn Upon site or hydropoint.learnupon.com, where we have certified on-demand free training, as well as lots of options at our YouTube channel. And with that, we're ready to start looking forward to next week, where we will review Optiflow programming with Renee Orta, who is a great water manager from Mosaic Consulting and manages hundreds of Optiflow controllers. So he'll be a great guest to kind of chime in and understand some real world experience in programming these and the programming tools that Weathertrack has to help you do this. All right. So Chris Manchuk, I'm coming back at you. Any questions on the chat line that we need to deal with before we call it a wrap?
I think we answered them. There's a couple that are out there that I've just said we'll follow up a little more technical detail. So we need to, we'll get back to people on those. But thanks everybody for the great questions. Thank you, Joe, for your time. Appreciate it. Have fun out there. Stay safe today, and look
Definitely
forward to
seeing
everybody next week.
Thank you, Chris.
Ben Slick, anything for the good of the group?
No, well, appreciate your time again, as always. Look forward to catching up with you next week. And if there's anything that we can do to make these more powerful or entertaining for you, please let Ben Coffee fella right there know.
Yes, absolutely. We love doing this, and we'd love to keep doing it. Some of the feedback we got last week informed what we're doing next. So we got some great questions about auto mode, and we're going to, after the Optiflow experience, we're going to try and work in some of the questions that we didn't get to answer and make a whole episode out of those. So excited about that. Joe, last chance. You got anything for the good of the group?
You know what? Any site you're struggling with water windows or just general management, look at Optiflow. I'll be helping a site next week that's got a 2-inch main line, 77 stations that they've been struggling trying to water for the last 10 years. And I know that this will solve the problem because there's a lot of little zones that Optiflow will run at the same time. So, grateful the opportunity to speak today, and look forward to continue to work with Ben and Chris and Ben. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Likewise, Joe. As always, I appreciate the partnership and the friendship. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.